I just want to ask you all a question. Have you ever in your life, in your journey of life, have you been in a very difficult situation, so overwhelming, so challenging, that you needed help so desperately and there was none? You needed support, you yearned for it, you prayed for it, you looked out for it, but no one was there to support you. Not your friends, not from your associates, not even from your family. You felt so alone. And then as a Christian, you turned to God. And consistently and persistently you prayed. And it all seemed that God was silent. Have you ever been in that kind of situation? And if you have ever experienced it, how did you manage it? Reading through the person of Jesus Christ, we can actually see that Jesus had a similar experience. First was the silence of his Father, the silence of heaven. Before his arrest, Jesus went into the garden to speak with his Father within the context of prayer. He went there 3 different times. He went to him and said one thing in all those 3 times. Father, my soul is sorrowful. Can you please take this cup away from me? For those 3 times, the Father was silent. Then after his arrest, the trial and then the persecution. This lasted a few days, 2 or more. Within these days, or within the process, the heaven was silent. Then at the last moment, Jesus hanging on the cross had to cry out again to his Father. But Father, why have you deserted me? Again, the Father was silent. Beside the silence of the Father, there was also a clear lack of support from his friends, followers, and admirers. Before his arrest, when Jesus was going into the garden, he took along with him 3 of his best friends, Peter, James, and John. And when they got there, he told them, stay here, pray, give me support while I go to talk things over with my Father. For 3 times, he came back to those his friends and found them asleep. They were all sleeping. They couldn't help him at that time. They couldn't even support him. Simply stay awake and pray for me. They couldn't do it. Then after his arrest, till all the moment till persecution and crucifixion, there was no support, no help. Remember that he had thousands of persons following him wherever he went, when he was actively going around and preaching. Remember, at a point, he fed over 5,000 men, excluding women and children. Remember, there were thousands and hundreds of people he delivered and he cured of their diseases. Remember, there were moments when the crowd was so massive that he couldn't even eat or rest. Now the question is, where were these people? All the time he was going through his trial. No friends, not the family member. There was no Joseph. There was no Mary. This is not an indictment. I'm just explaining the story and the plot. Nobody was there to help him. Only one stranger, Simon of Cyrene, who was enlisted by force. Where were his friends? Then, significantly, before the trial started, Jesus told them, it's going to get tough. Peter said, I will stand up for you. I will defend you. I'll be there to give you support. Don't worry. Where was Peter? With all his promises and generosity, Peter was nowhere to be found. Sometimes, that is how life is. You look for support at your weak moment, at your vulnerable moment, none is forthcoming. Even those who promise to be there for you, just give me a call. I'm A phone call away. Just call me. When you call, the number will be switched off or not available, or they're not disposed to answer. How do you handle it? Let's go back to how Jesus handled it. Jesus had to deal with the silence of his Father. He had to deal with the silence of heaven. He had to deal with the lack of support from his friends, followers, and admirers. Because he perfectly understood that was his own moment. That was his own defining moment. And that was why, even when he went to his Father to ask him to please take away the cross, the cup from him, he added something. He said, Father, take away this cup from me. However, if it is your will, no problem, I get it. And then from the cross, he made another request, dealing with this lack of support. He made another request to his Father and said, that was one of his prayers from the cross. He said, Father, forgive these people. Which people? The people who refuse to help me. The people who refuse to support me. The people who denied me. The people who betrayed me. The people who are flogging me and persecuting me. Forgive them because they do not know what they are doing. Because they do not realize that this is my moment, a moment providentially destined for me to do that which I alone is destined to do. Jesus understood that the seeming silence of his Father was an eloquent endorsement of the plan of what he was going through. Jesus understood that the apparent lack of help and support from people around was actually help in disguise. I have always come to understand that there will be a moment in your life when you had to face that one thing all alone by yourself. It will seem like the heaven is quiet. It will seem like the world is quiet. You are just face to face with your matter. How do you do it? You become upset because people didn't turn up. You become upset because God didn't answer you. We must know that there are things that are uniquely ours to do. Whether it is a cross, a matter, or a challenge. It's not a time to blame people for not coming through for you. Why? There is one beautiful thing St. John said in his first letter. He said, what is in us is far greater and more powerful than what is outside of us. We must realize that sometimes the seeming absence of support, the seeming silence of God could be an opportunity for us to look inward in order to discover and maximize that strength, that greatness which God has deposited in us. I want to believe that why God was silent, beside being the plan, God knew, the Father knew that my son is capable of doing this by himself because he has got all he needed in him to carry it out. He doesn't need the support of people because I have fully equipped him at this moment to do this, and he can do it. And also we need to understand sometimes that people will not always be there to help us, to support us, not out of bad will. Besides God, who is always there for us, the only person who will be always there for you, no matter what you're passing through, is that one person you see staring at you on your mirror. So when you go home, look at your mirror. Whoever you see there looking at you, that is the only one person that will not abandon you. And it's better when we realize that, then we begin to build support system and discover that sometimes God has so much equipped us to carry out a challenge before us with or without the support of people. Jesus recognized that fact. That he needed not the support of his disciples at that time, because he has got everything in him to go to the Calvary and to win. So dear friends, life could be quite challenging. It is indeed. Support could be lacking when you are most vulnerable. The heaven might be quiet when you are on your knees praying. How do you handle it? Don't get upset. Don't get disappointed. Don't throw in the towel. Don't be angry at God. Look inward. You could find that God has already prepared you for that particular mission without you knowing. Look inward. You could see that there's something in you that is so great, that is so powerful, that is so available for you to conquer that moment. Jesus recognized that the power to go to the Calvary is already in him. Jesus recognized that the strength to win at the Calvary was already in him. So he needed not the support of people around. And that's why he had to pray, Father, forgive them because I got it. How do you handle a problem when you are just alone and you feel alone? It is important to look inward. You could find the solution there.